Here we go from the Silver Creek Studios. I'm Jared, and this is the BFIBs Almanac. Spring training is in full force. Pitchers and catchers have already reported. Position players have reported today. They will have their first workout tomorrow. All kinds of action taking place down in Jupiter, Florida for the Cardinals. And we still have a bunch of unsigned free agents. It's kind of crazy. This happened a little bit last year. We had some guys sign late. But there are still 50, 60-plus free agents that have not signed with teams, and some of the biggest names are still out there. We talked a lot about Bryce Harper, a little bit about Manny Machado, but a guy who has kind of gone a little under the radar, at least as far as Cardinals fans are concerned, is a pitcher, Dallas Keuchel. He is still available. He's considered the top free agent starting pitcher on the market, and even though I don't really think the Cardinals are going to make a move like this, it is kind of interesting to see maybe should they make that move and how would a guy like Dallas Keuchel fit in the Cardinals rotation. How do the guys that we have penciled in right now compare to his numbers? So we're going to dive into Dallas Keuchel on this episode. But first, I'd like to invite you to get a hold of the show on Twitter and Instagram at BFIBs Almanac. And you can email us at Gmail, bfibsalmanac@gmail.com. And you can find us on YouTube, BFIBs Almanac Podcast. All right, let's dive in. So for those of you who don't know, Dallas Keuchel has been in the league 7 years. He's really been kind of known as a starter since 2014. And since that season, he has had a sub-3 ERA 3 times in 2014, 2015, and 2017. He was the Cy Young Award winner in 2015. With a 20-8 record, a 2.48 ERA, 232 innings pitched, 216 strikeouts, and a 1.017 WHIP. So an amazing season. Definitely earned the Cy Young Award that year. Now, with all those innings pitched and all those strikeouts, he has battled injuries every season since. In 2016, he had shoulder fatigue. They actually shut him down at the end of the year. In 2017, he had neck stiffness. I don't think he missed a whole lot of time for that. And then in 2018, he had a foot issue that he was apparently having injections for up until the end of the season. So he's definitely sort of worn down a little over the last few years. Now, he has still put up some decent numbers. In fact, just last year, he was 12-11 with a 3.74 ERA, 204 and 2/3 innings pitched, 153 strikeouts, and a 1.314 WHIP, with a 2. All that added up to a 2.6 WAR for the year. So, not a tremendous season, but not a bad season at all. Definitely, still considered an effective pitcher, and he's only 31 years old. Now, that being said, his 2019 projections are not all that great. They're pretty similar to last year. So, 11-9. 3.71 ERA, 177 innings pitched, so a little drop off there. Again, these are projections. 147 strikeouts and a 1.266 WHIP. So they're expecting his walks and hits to improve, but a lot of his other numbers to stay pretty similar. So those numbers are, I would say, most closely resemble his 2016 season, where he only had a 0.4 WAR. Now, some of those numbers factor in are a little closer to his 2018 season, some of the 2016. So, again, he had a 2.6 WAR last year, a 0.4 WAR. So maybe somewhere in between, maybe like a 2.0 WAR pitcher. So, not bad. Definitely something you might want. Now, he's a soft-tossing lefty. His fastball averages just over 89 miles an hour. He did drop off a little bit in 2016 when he had the shoulder soreness. So he's not a hard throwing pitcher. He's definitely that crafty type, but he's a left-hander. I would like to see another lefty starter. But, he's not an overpowering pitcher like some of these guys. So let's take a look at our current penciled in rotation and how those guys compared. Carlos Martinez in 2018 was 8-6 with a 3.11 ERA, only 118 and 2/3 innings pitched. He missed a lot of time. I think he was on the DL 3 times. 117 strikeouts, a 1.348 WHIP, and a 1.5 WAR. So his WHIP was pretty high. We talked about before where his that 1.31 WHIP was high for him. Or the 1.35 WHIP was, I think, 0.05 higher than the league average. He used to be kind of in the 1.2s. So last year was not a great season for him as far as WHIP. But his projections for this coming season are 1.258 WHIP. So getting that WHIP back down. 132 innings pitched. So again, not a great number of innings. I guess they're projecting him to miss some time. 132 strikeouts with a 3.48 ERA. So, not bad, but not great either, and that's Carlos Martinez. Miles Mikolas last year, he was the ace of the staff, whether we thought he would have been or not. He was 18-4 with a 2.83 ERA, 202 innings pitched, 146 strikeouts, and a 1.071 WHIP for a 4.3 WAR. So, an amazing season, excellent numbers. How does he project for this coming season? They're thinking 13-5 with a 3.26 ERA, 160 innings pitched, 129 strikeouts, and a 1.15 WHIP. So still a good WHIP, going up a little bit. Quite a bit, a drop in innings pitched. So I guess they're projecting him to miss some time. I think you kind of always project for a pitcher to miss time unless they've just historically always been healthy and they're in a prime age. You kind of always project them to miss some innings, but you never really know. Flaherty, let's go back. Carlos Martinez is 27. Miles Mikolas is 30. Flaherty is 23. Last year, he was only 8-9. As much as we think he had this stellar season and turned into a stud by the end of the year, he did. His overall win record was he had a losing record, 8-9. Now, he had a 3.34 ERA, not bad. 151 innings pitched, 182 strikeouts, a 1.106 WHIP, and a 2.6 WAR. So very good numbers for the most part. That win-loss record doesn't look that good, but that's based on the offensive support he was getting and things like that. He is projected to have a 7-8 record, so again a losing record, with a 3.68 ERA, so an uptick in his ERA. 137 innings pitched, so they're expecting him to miss quite a bit of time. Only 156 strikeouts, down from 182, and a 1.16 WHIP. So it's still a good WHIP. Again, these are all just projections from Baseball Reference. A lot goes into that, but a lot of times they're pretty close to getting it right. Michael Wacha is 27. Now he, if you recall, had a very good start to the season last year before being injured and never really getting a chance to come back. He started out 8-2 with a 3.2 ERA, 84 1/3 innings pitched, 71 strikeouts, 1.233 WHIP, and only a 0.9 WAR. But again, that's because he missed a lot of time. If he had sustained those numbers throughout the season, he would have had a pretty good WAR. Now, he's projected to go 8-5 with a 3.97 ERA, so an uptick in his ERA. 118 innings pitched, again, not close to being a full season. 109 strikeouts and a 1.314 WHIP. So an uptick in his WHIP. We'd like to see that in the 1.2s. It's not that high, though, 1.31. Finally, Adam Wainwright is 37. Last year, he battled a lot of injuries, couldn't get his velocity up on and off the DL. He was 2-4 on the season with a 4.46 ERA, 40 1/3 innings pitched, 40 strikeouts, and a 1.463 WHIP with a 0 WAR. Projected to go 6-5, 4.7 ERA, 92 innings pitched, 79 strikeouts, 1.435 WHIP. So not really projected to have a very good year. So all that being said, let's recap how Dallas Keuchel compares to those 5 guys. He's expected to, the projected numbers, to have a worse ERA and a worse WHIP than 3 of those guys, Seamart, Mikolas, and Flaherty. And he's expected to have a better strikeout total than all of them but Jack Flaherty. And he's expected to pitch more innings and have more wins than all 5 of them. So in one sense, he's, three of the five guys, he's not expected to do as well in ERA and WHIP. Waka and Wainwright are the two that he's expected to outperform in ERA and WHIP. He is expected to have more strikeouts than all of them than Flaherty and more innings pitched and wins than all of them. So that should tell you he really ought to be replacing Adam Wainwright out of those five. By far a better WHIP, by far a better innings total and strikeouts and ERA. It's really not even close. Adam Wainwright just numerically, statistically doesn't fit in to that five-man rotation. So if you had to pick somebody else, you would go with Michael Wacha, who actually did put up really good numbers, but battled injury for half the season. So it's not unexpected for him to have some injury risk again. So if you had to pick somebody, maybe it'd be Wacha. Personally, for me, it'd be Wainwright. We love Waino, but he's past his prime. He's past his prime. He's definitely a high possibility candidate for injury again and just a lack of performance. We're all going to have to see it to believe it for him to do it again. But if you want to hedge your bets and cover your risk, you would go get a guy, and Dallas Keuchel could be that guy. Now, that being said, Keuchel's 31. He's not young, but 31's not old either for a pitcher, especially for a lefty who's not a hard thrower. And his numbers are decent, but they're not great. They're not amazing numbers that you think, wow, this guy's just so dominant, we have to go get him. And he's already turned down, he turned down the qualifying offer, which means he is going to have a draft pick tied to him, which I think is partly why he's still available and nobody's signed him. And he also turned down an offer in 2016, I believe, an extension from the Astros for $90 million over, I think it was 5 seasons. So that's what, $18 million a year. So now that's been a couple of years, but you'd have to assume he's going to want at least that much per year. If he turned that down a couple of years ago, granted the market has changed over the last couple of years, but he may think he's worth that much or more. And I'm not so sure that he is. Definitely not that length of time. Of course, like I said, it's been a couple of years, but 18 plus, I don't know, maybe. I would say a fair contract would be at age 31, 3 years, $60 million. So that's $20 million average, which I said, maybe he wasn't worth the 18 plus, but if you're only going to have to go 3 years on it, you kind of you'd be willing to pay a little more to get that shorter term. If he wanted to go 4 years, I'd maybe go 70 million, which is, less than 18 a year average. So I don't know that he would really want to do that, but at this point it's mid-February. Pitchers and catchers have already been in camp for a week. He may be running out of options. I haven't heard any news about any kind of offers that he has or hasn't gotten in dollars or years. So I don't know what he's hearing or what teams are, interested in offering. So maybe he's going to have to take less. But at this point, I wouldn't want to go too long on a guy like that. Now, we did talk a little bit about in the Andrew Miller episode, we were comparing some aging left-handed pitchers and how do they progress. And the numbers aren't too bad, actually. I think especially the guys who aren't relying on velocity for their movement and their out pitches, guys like him who can throw a little softer and still be effective, and they're hitting their corners and they're using late movement and things, they can be effective for a long time into their late 30s. So it's not unheard of to think that he could be a good pitcher for a while, but it's definitely not something I would want to take a risk on, especially with his injury history over the last 2 or 3 seasons and, some kind of 5 or 6 year deal. Patrick Corbin was the other big free agent starting pitcher this season, and he got, I believe, 6 years, $140 million. Now he's a couple years younger, maybe even 3 years young, 2 or 3 years younger than Keuchel, and he got 6 years, $140 million. So, what's that, $23 million average roughly? So Keuchel's definitely not going to get 6 years. At that age, he should really only get 3 or 4. And, you're not getting those prime seasons of 28, 29. So, he probably shouldn't get the 20 or 23 million average that Corbin got. So that being said, I think, 3 years, 20 million per season, or 4 years, 17, 18 per season average seems about right to me. If you were getting into some bidding war over him and you really felt like you needed him, and, maybe you'd give him that extra year or that extra million or two. But the Cardinals really aren't in that position. I'm only even having this discussion because I think it's interesting to see, kind of what if. They've got so much depth right now with their pitching staff, whether it's starters and relievers. They don't really have veteran depth. They got a lot of young guys, and that's always a concern when you're counting on young arms to give you, we'd like to see 200 innings from a starting pitcher. The only guy who gave us anywhere close to that last year was Miles Michaelis. He gave us right at 200 innings. Carlos Martinez was 118. Flaherty was 150. Waka was 84. Waino was 40. I mean, we didn't even get close to the number of innings from these 5 guys last year that you need to get from your starting rotation. So it would be nice to get a guy like Keuchel, who last year pitched 240 innings, and he kind of averages right around that 200 inning per season for his career. So he's definitely, even with these injuries that he's had over the last few years, they haven't been so major that they've kept him out for any substantial length of time. But, so I, definitely value a pitcher who gives you a lot of innings, and definitely a veteran presence, a guy who's won a World Series, he's won playoff series. He knows what it takes to win. I think he's probably a good leader for the pitching staff. I don't know that, but, I would think so. A guy who's got the experience and apparently, the good work ethic and ability to put himself in a position to play well. So I think he could be a valuable asset. I do think the starting rotation for the Cardinals is a big question mark. Even with all the depth that we have, there's a lot that could go wrong there. We have good reason to think we could see injuries from several of these guys, and we have good reason to suspect that the young guys may not be able to step in and fill that role. Even some of the minor league pitcher of the year last year for Memphis was Dakota Hudson, and as good as he did when he was called up last year, he also struggled by the end, and really essentially they didn't have to shut him down, but I mean, he was so ineffective at the end that they didn't go to him anymore. So I think some of that was just fatigue and the longest season he'd ever played, and a lot of innings. But he's not a guy that you just say, oh, we can plug in Dakota Hudson, no problem. He'll fill that void of a starter. Or Alex Reyes, oh, well, he's our starter, he's our stud prospect, we know what he can do. Well, we don't. He's coming off 2 serious injuries with surgeries. We don't know what he can do. Some of these guys like Ponce de Leon and Gant and Gomber, we've seen them be good and effective, but we also don't know that they can do it for 200 innings and be effective, repeatedly against the same lineups and teams. So there's a lot of question marks there. I wouldn't mind the Cardinals going out and getting Keuchel, especially because he's a lefty. I think we've missed a lefty for a long time now. Garcia was great in that role, and I really think having a lefty starter forces your opponent teams to alter their lineups sometimes when they don't want to. It makes them play guys off the bench that maybe they wouldn't normally, or change the order of the lineup and all that thing. So I think there's a lot of value just in having a lefty, even if he's not your ace. Just having a guy in your rotation that's left-handed brings some extra value. So would he be a good fit? I think so. Again, I don't want to necessarily overpay for him. I don't want to give him too many years, but if for some reason they could sign him for 3 years, $60 million, that'd be great. I don't think they're going to do it. I think they're content with what they have. At least that's what they're showing to everyone, and they're going to give that depth a chance. But, it'd be nice if they would kind of provide some insurance to the team with a veteran, reliable 200-inning starting left-handed pitcher. So we'll see. It's still early in spring. You never know if somebody's going to get hurt or be ineffective, or if Keuchel's, demands are going to come down. Again, having that draft pick tied to him hurts his chances of getting signed by a contending team, but you never know. So we'll see. Keep your eyes out on spring training coverage. Check out all the local St. Louis reporters, and look online, STL Today, Viva Alberto's. Check out Instagram. There's so many photos and video clips coming, all kinds of stuff with the new hitting coach, Jeff Albert. Lots of stories with the young guys coming up and the veterans working with them, and where's Molina at in his rehab? Where's Wainwright at in his rehab? Where's Reyes at in his rehab? All kinds of cool stuff. It's an exciting time to be a Cardinal fan. So check it all out. And I appreciate you listening to the podcast. And I hope you tune in next time. Until then, I'm Jared, and this is the BFIBs Almanac.